It's story time, and today I'm going to be reading to an excerpt from my new book, Liberalism Find a Cure, so you can see just how serious, in-depth, and well-written it is. Because when I'm talking off the top of my head in normal YouTube videos and during interviews, I still can't convey the information in the way that I've been able to put it together and really polish it up in this book. There's 330 pages in this book with over 850 footnotes, so I'll give you a little sample of what's inside, starting with the introduction. The differences between liberals and conservatives used to be pretty clear-cut and well-known to those who paid even the least bit of attention to politics. People generally knew where someone with opposing political views stood on important issues involving immigration, gun control, abortion, war, gay marriage, social welfare programs, etc. While not everyone has always been clearly defined by the general attributes of what the usual core beliefs are of someone who is a Republican or a Democrat, the primary differences and objectives of each ideology have been deeply rooted and widely understood. Historically, there have been compelling arguments put forth by both sides of a debate, but recently the seemingly endless tug-of-war between the left and the right took a dramatic turn. The left's well-established counterpositions, some of which had at least been reasonable on the surface, have been replaced by a variety of new and bizarre ideas that are hard to even take seriously, let alone understand. It is as if we're living in an episode of The Twilight Zone, where we are witnessing an outbreak of some strange mass psychosis that's sweeping across the country. We're seeing the mainstream media, Hollywood celebrities, and professors on college campuses promoting such preposterous agendas about race, sexuality, and life in general that it's impossible in many cases to distinguish their ideas from satire poking fun at them. Liberalism has ballooned into a mental health crisis, and it's not just an epidemic of odd behaviors and proposed new laws from a small number of disturbed individuals who in the past would be featured as circus freaks or guests on the Jerry Springer Show. Their positions are being embraced, endorsed, and promoted by the liberal media establishment and the entertainment industrial complex. Not only are these once fringe individuals and beliefs being glorified and celebrated by the media, but there are also a growing number of laws and corporate policies being put in place that demand everyone else accept these lunatics and their behavior as if they're totally normal. Facebook now recognizes literally countless genders after first expanding the options from the old-fashioned male and female to 58 different gender options in 2014. But that wasn't inclusive enough, so now the gender list isn't even a checkbox with either male or female. It's a fill in the blank where you can list anything from peanut butter to an attack helicopter as your gender. The state of New York now legally recognizes 31 genders and made it a crime if you don't refer to someone as their preferred pronoun. That means if someone identifies as gender non-binary, you cannot refer to them as a he or a she. Some people are now identifying as dragons, elves, and even aliens. Equally insane views on race and sexuality are spreading. You probably heard some of this lunacy, but unless you've been monitoring the trend closely for the last several years, what you've seen and heard is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface is an epidemic of utter madness that's trying to rise up and take control of our culture. Criticizing much of this new liberal agenda has been deemed hate speech by the leftists, and they're increasing their levels of violence in order to intimidate those who speak out against them. We've seen a growing trend of violence on college campuses by students determined to stop conservative speakers from giving talks. The perpetrators justify their terrorist behavior by labeling speech and ideas violent and claim that they must then use violence to stop what they say is a fascist ideology from being adopted by conservatives who are simply arguing against this modern-day liberalism. It's now commonplace for those on the left to defame average conservatives and Trump supporters as white supremacists and Nazis, which has created a dangerous political climate not seen in America in recent history. Leftists encouraging and celebrating violence against Trump supporters is a regular occurrence on social media. Many have equated the red Make America Great Again hat with a Nazi swastika, and a wave of anti-Trump mass hysteria has swept across the country. Throughout history, cultures around the world have thought that strange behaviors like inserting large plates into their lips or stretching the necks of the members of their tribes was completely normal. Performing other dangerous body modifications like head and foot binding were a standard practice in some societies, but today we look back and marvel at these primitive cultures and have a hard time understanding how such unhealthy and unnatural acts were conceived, let alone seen as normal. Hopefully the same will be true in our future, and we can look back at how liberals almost unraveled the basic fabric of society because of their poisonous ideas, but thankfully we were able to rein in the craziness and restore normalcy. But only time will tell. If we can't put an end to their madness soon, the human race will be psychologically scattered in a million different directions and crawling all over each other trying to survive like a bunch of ants after someone steps on their colony. Maybe crazy people have too much time on their hands these days, since idle hands are the devil's workshop, as the saying goes. Or maybe what would have been a fleeting curiosity by a few isolated, mentally unstable individuals has been given a breeding ground, since different people with the same bizarre fetishes and delusions can now connect with each other through the internet, and instead of having friends who would discourage these kinds of abnormalities, they find strangers halfway across the country who share in their madness and foment it. Logic and science are no longer accepted by a growing number of leftists. In fact, different points of view from what they hold aren't allowed anymore. They feel that real-life interactions should be identical to their social media feeds, where they can customize who they follow and exactly what they see and hear, as well as who they can block out with the tap of a finger. Their life has become a bubble they think should be their own personalized safe space utopia, filled with only things they like, without any opposition, disagreements, or challenges. But that's not how the real world works, and they're very upset about it. And when they get upset, they get even more unstable. The only rational explanation for why this is happening is that the liberal establishment is strategically trying to unravel the social fabric of society as part of a hostile takeover. The basic unit of this fabric is the nuclear family. And as liberal activist Linda Gordon said, quote, "The nuclear family must be destroyed." Whatever its ultimate meaning, the breakup of families is now an objective revolutionary process. Destroy the family and the long-established traditions of the human race will vanish, and people will be left without any support structure instilling morality, loyalty, responsibility, or spirituality. The government will decide what is right and wrong and provide basic needs such as food, shelter, and financial assistance. Or, as George Orwell wrote in 1984, one of the primary aims of the tyrannical government in his book called The Party was, quote, "to prevent men and women from forming loyalties which it might not be able to control." We are under attack by those who want to grow the government so large and powerful that it'll be an all-encompassing entity that is involved with every facet of our lives. They want the government to become God. A lot of this insanity started on college campuses in the early 2010s. College is the first time kids are completely free from parental supervision and is the beginning of a new life. It's often in a new city with new people, new places to explore, new ideas to think about, and an opportunity to shed the labels and restrictions they've had following them around since middle school or high school. They're also still very impressionable and can easily be convinced to believe radical ideas no matter how irrational or impractical. Recent studies show that adolescence lasts until the age of 24, which means that a person isn't really an adult until 2 years after they graduate college, assuming they went to college, which you don't need to do to have a good career. But instead of preparing kids for the real world, many college professors seek to indoctrinate them with their own radical liberal agendas. And in this safe space culture they've created, instead of growing up, many students are actually regressing. Their minds are filled with useless and unrealistic ideas about how the world works, and many get so fixated on past injustices that they can't navigate through our modern society without seeing everything through a distorted lens that's stuck looking in the past. The book's not available in stores, by the way, so you have to go to Amazon.com or download it onto your tablet or your e-reading device, and there's a link in the description below to the Amazon listing. Let's continue. With elementary school kids having their own cell phones and tablets, they now have access to a dangerous online world filled with YouTubers and social media stars who introduce them to ideas and activities no children should be subjected to. Parents are at a loss and feel that if they don't let their kids have a smartphone or a tablet, their classmates will ostracize them since everyone else has one. And preventing them from consuming inappropriate content once one is in their hands is impossible. So children are being raised by viral videos, trending topics, and social media stars instead of parents. And it's setting up society for a disaster of unimaginable proportions. Today's children are growing up in a sea of attention-seeking tweets and Instagram posts, and each have a million different things screaming for their attention and try to take as much of it as possible, ruining their capacity to concentrate, their long-term memory, and even their ability to think. As media analyst Neil Postman noted, they're amusing themselves to death. The millennials have been called the lost generation because most of them can't fix anything on their cars or around the house. One survey claimed that 12% of people under the age of 35 don't even know how to change a light bulb. Another famous study even suggested that people now have the attention span of a goldfish and can only focus on a subject for 8 seconds before their mind starts to wander. It's probably not a coincidence. That's about as much time as it takes to read a tweet or look over an Instagram post. The younger generations are now so desensitized and have been so dehumanized that when they see someone get injured in an accident or assaulted on the street, their first thought is to pull out a cell phone and take a picture or record video of the situation so they can post it on social media, instead of calling for help or actually helping the victims themselves. Despite this cruelty, they think that they're helping make the world a better place. They go out of their way to virtue signal to others that they are good people by supporting the latest trendy social justice warrior causes. As the Urban Dictionary explains, virtue signaling is to take conspicuous but essentially useless action, ostensibly to support a good cause, but usually to show off how much more moral you are than everybody else. Every day, more people seem to get further detached from reality and sink deeper into a synthetic world of contradictions and confusions. When conservatives make a joke now, many liberals think that we're being serious. When liberals are being serious, sometimes we think they must be joking. The story about a 34-year-old man who identifies as a 6-year-old and dominates a CrossFit kids class is a parody. But the one about a man in his 50s identifying as a 6-year-old is not. In the 1990s, men dressing up as women was a common occurrence in sketch comedies and sitcoms, but now men who dress up as women are participating in weightlifting competitions and UFC fights against actual women and dominating them. Many people are wondering what happened to free speech in America, since anyone who questions this growing madness is denounced as a fascist or a hateful bigot. Everything is racist to liberals, but blacks can't be racist because they're always the victim, they say. And racism always comes from white people, who are seen as the cause of all of society's problems. The snowflakes now complain about Thanksgiving because it reminds them of what the early settlers did to the Native Americans. Remember when we used to call them Indians? Well, that's too offensive today as well, so now they're Native Americans. Liberals hate Columbus Day for the same reason. They even hate the 4th of July because they claim it's a celebration of white men who stole the land from the natives. Many black people complain about the 4th of July because they don't want to celebrate the founding of the United States because some of the founding fathers owned slaves. They get upset about Valentine's Day because it makes people who are single feel ostracized and perpetuates cisgender heteronormative couples. They hate Christmas because Santa Claus is white and it's a Christian holiday. They hate Easter for the same reason. Many can't even celebrate Martin Luther King Day because instead of remembering the legacy of the man and the impact he had on civil rights, they use the day as an excuse to blame white people again for all of the problems in the black community. Liberals even complain about Mother's Day and Father's Day now because they make non-traditional families feel bad, and the holidays celebrate the traditional family, traditional gender roles, and heterosexual couples. All of this insanity will be examined in detail throughout this book, and it's really going to blow your mind, so I hope you're ready because things are about to get even more weird. Regarding climate change, liberals went from promoting reasonable ecological solutions aimed at reducing further environmental damage to paranoid fear-mongering about how global warming is supposedly going to wipe out the world's chocolate supply, make syrup extinct, and cause the internet to shut down. As crazy as all this sounds, it doesn't come close to the level of madness I'll be detailing in this book regarding liberals' latest views on race, gender, and sexuality. If a television commercial shows a white family enjoying a barbecue in the backyard, they say it contains microaggressions against blacks, Asians, and Latinos because it's not inclusive of other races. If it's a normal family with a husband and a wife and a few kids, that's not inclusive enough either because it doesn't have enough diversity, and is said to be divisive because it ostracizes gays and lesbians. That's why many Fortune 500 companies like Coca-Cola, Tylenol, Honey Maid, Chevrolet, and others are airing commercials featuring gay and lesbian couples or transgender people. Diversity is basically a code word, meaning less straight white people. Everything is now under scrutiny by the diversity police to make sure that blacks, gays, and transgenders star in tons of television commercials, sitcoms, and movies. But adding people of color to popular film franchises isn't enough. Liberals are demanding lead characters from Luke Skywalker to Captain America be depicted as gay in future versions of the films. I'll cover this in more detail later. These social justice warriors, as they're called, are even ruining comedy. When the television series Friends was added to Netflix in 2018, it reached a whole new audience who were too young to follow the show when it first aired in the 1990s. But many millennials found it too offensive and took to Twitter to complain about the sexist, homophobic, and transphobic elements in some of the plots. Jerry Seinfeld spoke up about the PC police and said he won't perform at college campuses anymore because the kids always complain about the jokes being too racist, sexist, and prejudiced, adding they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Chris Rock won't perform at college campuses either, saying that they're way too conservative, clarifying not in their political views, not like they're voting Republican, but in their social views and their willingness not to offend anybody. Other comedians like Joe Rogan and Tim Allen feel the same way about the younger generations being hypersensitive about jokes that everyone used to enjoy. It's not much of an exaggeration to compare what's happening today with a zombie apocalypse, even though such comparisons have become cliche. And while it's amusing on one level to see the bizarre activities and beliefs of liberals today, it is also becoming increasingly scary as their ideas and behaviors are being encouraged and endorsed by mainstream media outlets, pop culture celebrities, and even becoming protected by law. Many people are wondering, why is this happening? How could such insane ideas be accepted as normal and promoted as cool? The answer lies in what's called cultural Marxism. The left is aiming to tear apart the basic fabric of society, starting with the traditional nuclear family, gender roles, social norms, and acceptable behaviors. They want to smash the moral compass in people's consciences and erase all boundaries between what's right and wrong. This enables the construction of a larger bureaucracy to control society, and with people no longer adhering to the values which used to be instilled into them by their parents, grandparents, and peer groups, the government, or the state, is looked to as the ultimate authority in all things. Mainstream news, and particularly pop culture and celebrity influencers, are an extension of this authority, and their puppets serve as role models and arbiters of what people should think and how they should behave. One of the primary goals of communist parties after their revolutions were successful was to eradicate religions and the basic family unit in the countries they control. The government replaces God. The government determines what its citizens should do with their lives. Without tight-knit family structures and local communities, it's much easier to prevent people from uniting together for a common cause, such as resisting the increasing tyranny of a dictatorship and the restrictions on civil liberties they impose. Authoritarian regimes want everybody to obey the power structure and their false prophets or be destroyed. The more powerful a fascist regime gets, the more difficult it is for people to oppose it. And we're seeing the same mechanisms of control being put in place by the liberal establishment in America today, and their useful idiots being dispatched as foot soldiers on the ground trying to enforce them. We must take a close look at the various facets of today's liberal agenda if we hope to stop it. From the demonization of white people, to the explosion of gender identity insanity, to the promotion of perverted sexual practices and their double standards for free speech. We are, to paraphrase JFK's warning about communism, opposed by a ruthless and monolithic conspiracy. But these perpetrators aren't halfway around the world. They're inhabiting our own country, and they are completely out of their minds. Well, what do you guys think? And that's only the first few of 330 pages, documented with over 850 footnotes. And that's just the introduction. Wait until you get into the meat of some of these chapters. It's going to horrify you, but you need to know. And even if you've been tracking these issues fairly closely for some time, you still probably have only seen the tip of the iceberg of what it is that they're planning. So I hope you guys will check it out. And again, it's not available in stores. You'll have to order the paperback from Amazon.com or download the ebook onto your tablet or your e-reader. There's a link in the description below that'll take you to the Amazon listing. So go and check it out. Look forward to seeing what you guys think. Check back tomorrow for a new report, and I will see you soon.